Welcome to the Feminist Wellbeing Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Dodier, non-diet coach, certified intuitive eating counselor, and cognitive behavioral coach. And I've earned a PhD in diet culture. And at the age of 40, after graduating from a 25-year dieting career, I said, no more. I could use another word, but today we'll say no more. And I'm here today to guide you on this podcast on how to feel damn good about reshaping your mind instead of the size of your pants. And in this podcast, we're going to go beyond the food to fight diet culture and patriarchy by living powerfully and having more time. We're welcoming on the podcast today Vikki Yaffe to talk about a feminist approach to becoming time rich. One of the things that I hear the most, and that I used to say myself a lot before I was introduced to cognitive behavior coaching, was, I don't have the time. I don't have enough time. And that's what we hear a lot also for women we coach inside of Undiet Your Life when we start talking about well-being and self-care and taking time to care for ourselves. And a lot has to do with the way we think about time. I want you to consider this. In the same way that patriarchy and diet culture and society in general has conditioned us to think about our body, it has also conditioned us to think about time from a woman's perspective that does not put us in a place of power over our time. And we're going to break this down with Vikki in the podcast. So if you are someone who struggles with having enough time, pay real close attention to this podcast. It's likely going to knock your socks off in the way we talk about time. And also, I want to say this, I'm being coached hard by Vikki on this podcast about my own narrative about time, and particularly vacation. So if you want to hear me being coached about vacation and time, if you want to learn how to coach yourself about being time rich and how to hack your time, listen to the interview my team will roll right now. Welcome to the podcast, Vikki.
Thank you so much for having me.
I met you, I think it's a couple years ago when you were titled the Feminist Time Coach.
Mm-hmm.
And you taught me so much about time. And I wanted to do this episode about time to help other people get your message out and help unlearn the way we were taught about time and how to think about time in a way that's way more empowering than what we were taught. So I'm going to launch you with this quote that I always remembered from you. We're trained to think that time is discriminatory. Tell me more about this, what that means to you.
No, absolutely. So I always say my favorite thing about time as a resource is it doesn't discriminate, right? We all wake up with 24 hours and it doesn't matter how rich you are at 85, you cannot buy back another 10 years. So that's my favorite thing around time as a resource. And yet the way we're taught about time is absolutely discriminatory. And what I mean by that is we live in time rules, norms, and structures that do not consider us if we identify as female, if we have neurodiversity, if we have chronic illness, when we become parents, if we have jobs that are creative. So I would say 90% of the population has been ignored when it comes to the norms and the rules, the structures, and also the tools. This is the hardest thing. Even the tools that are supposed to support us around time were not designed with us in mind. And the issue with that is, if we want to get better with time, if we want to, approach our experience of time within the frameworks, we are using tools that don't work for us, which is why so many people, come to my work and to my world thinking like there's something wrong with me. I'm like, no. The tools don't work. It's the tools that are wrong.
It's the same message as me, right? It's not your body that's wrong. It's how you were taught to think about your body and how to deal with your body that's wrong. It's not you. You're just caught in a system that makes you feel terrible.
Right.
Can you give us a few examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, women operate on a different cycle than men. So everything around how we work is designed for the male 24 cycle and has zero consideration for the female cycle. I mean, now we are seeing it more, and we've actually partnered with some period charities and we're working with them. So I know there's many more things happening than when I started my work. I remember being like keeled over in an office in pain, like around that time of the month, and feeling embarrassed to even say anything. I remember walking around with tampons, hiding them up my sleeve, and the whole narrative of like, this is the secret that you have to keep. And even bringing it more recently to a few years ago when I got pregnant and I was put on bed rest. I didn't have a great pregnancy, and I can laugh about it now, but I was put on bed rest, and I remember thinking, I'm 7 weeks pregnant. I don't really want to tell people, especially because of the high risk involved. What would be my options if I still worked in London, in the city? Far more people would have to know than I wanted to, or I would have to get on the tube and get into work and put my baby's life at risk and potentially my own too. So, we're starting to move away from it, and we're still far away.
Did you watch, there was an announcement so I'm recording this June the 6th. I saw an announcement from FIFA, I think, the Women's Soccer League. I don't know if it's FIFA, but they have a new legislation, their new rules around women, and they have menstrual leave baked into their contract. Isn't it amazing?
Right. But what if it's not amazing? What if it's like the bare minimum?
Oh, yeah.
Why is that amazing? I'm like, of course that should happen.
So when we think about time, your message goes beyond the clock time. We're talking about like how we manage our days, our work time, our work days, our vacation. It goes way beyond just 1 hour.
Yes. So it applies to time. And one of the things I speak about a lot is how to create your most productive or most successful week. And so I do love to have some kind of time frame around it. And time, we can measure time in seconds, in minutes, in years, in decades, in centuries. So it really is however we want to apply it. So you're absolutely right there, yeah.
So when we think about time, so one of the things I hear the most from women in my world is, I just don't have enough time.
Oh, yeah.
How do you coach that? Or what is your reframe on that?
Yeah. So a lot of people say to me, I've got too much to do and not enough time. And I say, absolutely.
I am totally, yeah. I agree with you. That's the truth. But then what do we do with that?
Absolutely. That is the truth. And I don't even want to argue with it. We've got more roles than we've ever had. And I don't even mean just like parents, siblings, food delivery organizer, cooking in the kitchen. Even like we have social media channels, we have multiple inboxes. We've been adding and adding and adding to our responsibilities and not removing. So when we know that, we can stop with this like perfectionism fantasy that we're going to get it all done and acknowledge that at some point we have to be willing to say, I'm not going to get it all done. And these are the things that I'm going to not do. These are the things that I'm going to delete. And by the way, everyone listening, I promise you could delete 50% of the things in your life and still create the same results that you wanted. But our brains are so primed to keep doing what we've always done and to avoid change that we really don't want to do that. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is there's a lot of things that we could do less good or less perfect than we're doing them. The problem is, how we've been conditioned around school and how we've been socialized as women is to please other people above ourselves. And what do? We say, oh, I've not got enough time to do the thing I wanted to do, but someone else asked for my time. And I say, yeah, sure. So really getting clear around how, like, one of the big things that changed this for me and that really helps a lot of my clients is playing into how we've been socialized as women and making it. I would love to say, just listen to those 2 points and you'll all cut your to-do list in half, but you won't because you're human, you've got brains. So one of the super powerful questions to apply is, what do I want to be an example of? What do I want for the next generation? Now, this question has allowed my clients to actually allow themselves to be off work when they're sick, actually take care of themselves as a priority because it's also playing into that, the way we've been overly socialized to care so much about others. So how can we trick the brain? Or, you know me, I'm all about time hacking, which is brain hacking. How can we hack our brain so that we are working within its parameters, so that we are creating the change? For example, another one is, you know, rest is productive. And a lot of people will say, well, if we're going to rest, it shouldn't have to be productive. And my view is like, it shouldn't have to be. But if the difference is I'm either not going to rest or I'm going to allow myself to rest because I'm, you know, I've been conditioned to be productive, then I'm going to choose rest 100% of the time. I just think we have this like layered judgment of like, it should be this pure, like I'm doing it purely for myself. And like, that's great, but let's focus on doing the thing instead of perfecting how we do the thing.
So when you say make rest productive, you're talking about our intention to be more productive while resting. Is that what you're saying?
So it's not our intention necessarily to be more productive while resting, but it's knowing that rest is productive, right? Studies show that. So we're still attaching to our productivity obsession and our, you know, we're taught to be producers and consumers.
Yes.
And I'm saying, instead of requiring ourselves to detach from that completely, which, by the way, I would say I'm not 100% detached from it, nor will I probably ever be. So instead of requiring that complete clean finish, allowing ourselves to rest and be like, oh, this is, I always say rest is my business plan. So you can imagine how much that changed my relationship with rest in a super accessible way.
Right? It's like when we think about body image and we think I'm supporting my body because my body is a tool, as opposed to I'm doing exercise to lose weight, right? I'm supporting my body. So I'm supporting my bigger goal by resting.
Right. And it's like when people say, you know, working out is how you get fit. And you might say, I don't care about getting fit. I care about, you know, I just want to move my body and be connected to my body. Okay. But if you've been so conditioned that working out is how you get fit and that feels easier, instead of detaching and being like, I can't do it because I want to get fit because I'm against that narrative. Say like, okay, if that makes it easier as well, as long as I am doing the thing that I want to do with my body or my time, then that's a win for me.
What do you think of people who, and I often use that line, that time is an investment. I decide where I invest my time to produce certain things in my life.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a whole training called the Time Investment Sprint. Were you going to continue?
No, that's good. Like, I didn't realize you did the same thing. Like, oh,
Yes.
so am I.
Well, my background is in financial investing. So I have a whole framework speaking about time debt and time investing, and really the idea that things that we do today can set ourselves up tomorrow or can cost us tomorrow. Now, again, I just want to caveat this with, we're not looking for perfection here, but it's the idea. I think a total time hack is to be connected to your future self, because so often with time, this is what I see. And if this is you, don't worry, this is thousands of people that I've worked with, and this has definitely been me for most of my life, is we overcommit to what we're going to do tomorrow. We're like, oh, I've got 100 things I want to do this week. And I'm going to fit them all into my calendar. I'm going to do 20 things between 3 and 4 p.m. tomorrow. And they're all little things, but you know, they probably all take 10 minutes realistically, but I'm going to do 20 of them in 1 hour. Now, what we're doing today in terms of investment is setting up a bad investment, right? And then tomorrow when it comes, that tomorrow version of ourselves is overwhelmed and distracted all day because we've created this absolute mountain in the middle of the day. And then when things don't get done, which, you know, you're not going to get 20 things done in an hour. That's not how we're built to operate, and you don't need to. Then we move the 18 things we didn't get done to the next thing, which is already fully planned and accounted for. And then we move the 17 things to the next thing. What we're creating is time debt and really just setting our future self up for failure. So I'm exactly with you, Stephanie. We have to be thinking about how to set our future selves up for success. And for me, that comes with having an investment mindset around time.
So can I ask you to coach me on something?
Yeah. Fun.
So personal life, no issue with time from that perspective. Where I struggle is underestimating my time to do tasks at work. You're smiling. You're like, probably coach a lot of people on that. How would you approach that with me?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. The brain underestimates how long things take. Yeah. So now you know that. What are you doing with that information?
I try to give myself more time, but it's never, I don't want to say the right amount of time, but it's never enough time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like I never, and I think as I'm saying that, what I realize is I just don't want to say no to certain things.
Right. So as you know, you're familiar with our work and the people listening aren't. Just so everyone listening knows, my big thing is it's never really about the time. So when you say, I want to say no to certain things and I'm not doing, that's not a time problem.
It's me saying no to certain tasks.
Right. And why aren't you saying, can you think of a certain task that you want to say no to that you're not saying no to?
Well, I'll take the prime example. So right now we're planning for the vacation in July. And instead of putting my podcast on vacation, I'm trying to do all the pre-recording to continue to put podcasts out. So now instead of doing one podcast a week, I have to do 2 or 3.
Yes.
So now I have 3 hours of podcast recording instead of 1 hour every week because I don't want to put it on vacation.
Yeah. Which is interesting also that your brain's like, I either put it on vacation or I record all podcasts in advance. And there's probably like 50 other solutions out there. But it's interesting that the brain is like, it's A or B.
Yeah. And that's why coaching is so profound, is because I have all these thoughts in my brain about time and task, and I'm getting you inside of my brain to have a different perspective on it so I can think differently about it.
Exactly. And I'm also curious then, what are you afraid will happen if you put the podcast on pause? If we even stuck with that situation?
Well, so right away, the thought is back when I started the podcast 8 years ago, the way to get your podcast successful was producing a podcast every week. And I think I'm still operating from that thought.
But did everyone that produced a podcast every week create podcasts?
Absolutely not. It's just a thought.
Yeah.
It's not a fact.
Who do you think planted that thought in all of our podcaster heads?
Bro marketers.
Bro marketers with consistency, with zero consideration of the female cycle, because let's even put aside going on vacation and just speak about how, or even for me, when I was put on bed rest, I've had a few periods in my life where podcast recording has not happened with the best intentions. So it's this idea, it's not even your on purpose intentional narrative, it's a learned narrative you've learned from someone that actually you wouldn't want to be the CEO of your podcast.
So interesting. It's so fascinating to see that I'm still operating from that thought that was taught to me by, I remember exactly where I was told that. It was in a man-filled mastermind.
Yes.
Right? It's very hustle culture driven. So no matter what happened, it's every week, it's a podcast out. And I'm still operating from that, causing me to have to record so many more podcasts and filling my schedule with back to back for the next 3 weeks.
Yes. And so I'm going to reflect back to you. What's the example that you would love to be?
I would love to be on vacation, like putting a vacation thread on my podcast to show other women that we can go on vacation and not have to pay for our vacation by double working before.
Isn't that powerful, that question?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thank you so much for giving that example, because it's exactly what I'm speaking about. We don't realize our own blind spots, right? You and I know the benefit of coaching. This is it completely, is these narratives in our head that are non-negotiable that we don't even realize. Like it is actually possible to not release a podcast.
Yeah. So when you say I help people become time rich, right, through time hacking, is that what you mean? Or can you give us more example?
Yeah. I mean, essentially, I think a lot of programs focus on helping people achieve their goals faster.
Yeah. And do more with their time. Can we just say that?
Yeah. And do more with their time and get more done. And my focus around time hacking is to help you achieve more, not do more, achieve more by doing less so that you have plenty of time and plenty of space. Now, again, it's like we've been taught time is a commodity. taught to think of ourselves as a commodity. And so we're always looking to spend. And I like to think of time as a resource. And I'm always thinking about how can I protect it? How can I create excess space? And that to me is what it means to be time rich. So you have plenty of time.
So when we say time hacking, we're meaning to learn to say no or to be more decisive of where we invest our time?
So time hacking is built off the idea that things don't take time, they take people. So it's like we're looking at time, we're trying to manage time, squeeze time, we're looking at time as the problem and time as the solution. And a few years ago, off the back of my third burnout experience, just to really be honest with you guys, this is not something I was born with. That's what me and Stephanie were speaking about before. I was not born with this. So this idea that things take time led me to overworking and doing more time and working long hours, 100+ hour weeks at certain points, and driving myself into multiple burnouts. And then I got to the point after my third burnout where I said, that's it. I'm not going to be as successful. I'm going to take care of myself. And that's when I achieved my 3-year business goal within 6 months. And I remember thinking, and I was in a mastermind at the time, and I looked around at, the massive growth I'd had and everyone in the room that maybe hadn't had that same growth. And really like, what was different? What was it? I wasn't focused. The timeline was the same. I was working less. What was different? And what was different led down to the theory of time hacking, which at that point was a hypothesis, and now I've helped thousands of people. But essentially, it's that things don't take time. They take managing and mastering our brain. So our time doesn't need to be managed. Our brain does as a tool. I always say our brain is our number one time tool. The second one is decision making. How are we making sustainable, fast, effective decisions and having a framework for that? And the third is our relationship to fear and failure. And that encompasses like rejection and other people's opinions and all of that narrative. Essentially, the idea being, if you master your brain, you master your decisions, and you master your relationship to fear and failure and all that encompasses, then you will achieve more faster. And that doesn't require you to burn the midnight oil, so to speak.
So when you achieve your 3-year goal in 6 months, I hate to use the word productive, did you become more faster at doing the thing that was planned out? Or you just said no to more things and just focus on the more essential thing?
Yeah. So I was doing the scary things first, and I was not doing the things that I like to do because I was good at them and because it was comfortable and because I could hide away. I failed 3 times more than I really failed. And I failed like face planted all the time. I felt during that time embarrassment, humiliation. Like it sounds all rosy now, and I didn't know this at the time, but it created such a deeper relationship of self-trust because I was exposing myself to a lot of things. I didn't plan out all of my weeks and all of my days, so I wasn't following the plan better, but I was committed to doing less. I remember the first 2 months I'd been hired by the school I certified in to work for them. And my business was growing and I was working for them 20 hours a week. And previous Vikki would have said, I'm going to keep working with them until I'm making X amount. And in my second month, I was like, okay, I'm going to stop working with them. It feels terrifying, but I'm going to believe in myself and back myself and make that scary decision and be willing to face fear and failure. So there's a little bit of a framework in action, so to speak.
That's amazing. I want to make sure we have time to cover this because there's another thing I really learned from you is your brain loves wasting time. I think that's probably part of your brain act and using your brain. Tell the audience more about this. Your brain loves wasting time.
Yes, our brain evolved for survival in the wild. It did not evolve from modern day world. And for me, for listening to podcasts, sat at a computer or walking in the park or whatever it might be, all this technology, our brains evolved to keep us safe. And that means that it wants to avoid doing anything, right? So we can conserve energy. I just want to sit in the cave and conserve my energy for when I need it. It means we want to avoid failure. Failure used to be dangerous. Failure to find adequate shelter. Failure to win a fight with a predator. Literally was life or death. So all of these factors come into play when it comes to wasting time. Our brain sees wasting time as literally life saving. And our brain's number one job is not to achieve our goals, it's to keep us alive. So it will do very clever things in order to do this. Now, a lot of time wasting tactics out there were not built with women in mind, were not built to solve for the root cause. And actually, one of the things I say is time management tools themselves are a waste of time. If I'm rewriting my to-do list for the third time this week, if I'm color coding a plan, shoving things in that I know I'm going to have to move around later, if I am perfecting the plan instead of actioning things, then those are time-wasting strategies that we've been told and taught are productive, but actually don't produce results. So I always say, if the brain is our number one time tool, the brain is also our number one time waster. I actually have a guide where I go into it that you can access. It's timehackers.xyz/guide. We'll leave the link in the show notes where I talk about the 4 biggest time wasters. But one of them is even what Stephanie mentioned today, which is this narrative of, I don't have enough time. And I want everyone listening to think, what happens in your body, in your brain, in your day, in your behavior, when you are literally believing that, when that thought is going through your brain over and over again? Are you productive? Are you effective? Are you making decisions?
You're ruminating. I'm ruminating anyway. That's what I do. Poor me. I don't have enough time.
Yes. And if we need more time, I always say you literally cannot add an extra hour in the day. So it makes us completely powerless and a total victim to the number of hours in the day. There's no solution. You don't have enough time. I cannot create another hour in the day for you. And all of these, tools that are going to help you manage time, they still can't create another hour in the day for you. Time is a finite, limited resource. Humans are not. And that's why time hacking is all about focusing on the human so that we achieve more faster.
Just that is enough. One last quote that I got from you: things take as long as you let them. And this is so true for me. Because when I don't put a timeline to things or a deadline to do things, I go into how can I do it better? How can I actually rewrite the whole thing instead of just reposting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big one. Even a lot of my clients will say, I had this 2-month deadline, 3 days away, and now I've not done it for the whole 2 months. And also a lot of people will use that to criticize themselves. And I think, well, if that's how you operate, then just put it to the side and say to yourself, I know I'm going to do it those 3 days. Deadlines, just like calendars, just like to-do lists, all of these things are tools. And the problem is when we become a tool to these tools. And what I mean by that is, we forget knowing ourselves in the attachment to the deadline. Deadlines are something that can absolutely help us, right? Our brain is terrified to do the thing until it's more terrified of the deadline. If you can relate to that, then deadlines might be a tool that you can use to support yourself in getting things done. But be very mindful of criticizing yourself if the way that deadlines are set for you in your job, in your work, are not supportive of how you operate. By the way, a lot of things that are decided for us will not be supporting of how we operate, and people won't care when you deliver, when you create results. So I would just think about, 1, do deadlines serve me? And 2, how do they serve me? Because as Stephanie said, things take as long as we let them. Sometimes we have a formal deadline, sometimes we don't. But I really said that to stand against the narrative that things take time, which is so open-ended and so undecided that we're almost completely powerless to the time passing, versus, no, I decide how long things take. I'm the decider. I'm powerful. And by the way, it's also okay if you decide this thing is going to get done. Like we said, understand that sometimes your primitive brain is going to make, can I swear?
Oh, yeah. We swear a lot.
Yeah, okay. Your primitive brain, wired to keep you alive, is going to make shitty decisions to trip you up on purpose, especially as you get closer to success. And as you get closer to achieving, it's going to get louder. And it's going to say, yeah, we'll do this tomorrow. We'll tell this person we'll give it to them tomorrow, knowing that you are not going to give it to them tomorrow. So it's all that's why I'm really against giving hard and fast rules. And instead, it's this dance. It's this relationship between you and your brain. It's this relationship between you and time. And I just really, if I was going to leave you with one thing, it would be being kind to yourself, giving yourself excess time instead of, to what Stephanie was sharing earlier, like, well, it's still not happening as fast as I want to. Well, then give yourself a whole, if you're like this, I think this is going to take an hour. Well, then I think it'll take an hour and a half. Give yourself 5 hours. See what happens. Get it done in less time. Like, you want to be playing with time. And I think the industry of time is so serious and so rigid and so structured and so heavy. So much of our value is tied up in it that, we end up feeling powerless and shitty and just like a victim.
And it's all tied into hustle culture, right? It's about doing more with less. Mm-hmm. And for the people listening, because we're like, my podcast is about diet culture and patriarchy, like hustle culture is like the cousin of diet culture. It's telling you just got to do more, where in fact you don't have to do more and more. It's just a concept that we've been taught. It's just like another layer of socialization.
Absolutely. And there's a lot. I've had a few weight loss coaches come through my programs, and there's a lot tied in between weight and diet. I speak about how the time industry is like the diet industry, where there's like thousands of plans, and if any of them worked, we just do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, could we say, I'm not familiar with the time world, but I'm familiar with diet culture. Like, in part, the diets are designed not to work. So you keep buying into it. Is it the same thing with your tool?
This is what I'm saying, right? Everyone is centering time as the problem and time is the solution. And so we keep coming back and we keep buying the new planner, keep downloading the new app. But your brain is the thing. Your brain is the thing that can press snooze. Your brain is the thing that will ignore the app. Your brain is the thing that will decide that you'll get 20 things done in an hour tomorrow. Your brain is the answer. And thousands of solutions are out there telling you it's time that you need to do better with. And so exactly like I said, even managing time has become a distraction away from doing the things that move us forward, doing the things that we want to do.
It's an industry, otherwise said. Time is an industry that created a pile of product in order to people to keep not getting enough time and keep fueling itself.
Absolutely.
Like the beauty industry and the diet industry is just another game. And at the end, so your program teaches people to get to the root cause. So they'll never buy another product again.
Yes, exactly. And people will come in and say like, all right, I'm ready to plan my perfect week. I mean, and some people, again, I'm very big in what works for you and keep doing what works for you. And it's okay if it stops working for you. And it's really fun watching people realize, like a lot of my clients, I can't believe it's actually possible to have more space, to be more like present with my family and to pick up hobbies that I enjoy. And I've not changed my day job, but I'm achieving more. And I'm like, yeah, there you go.
It's because we got to the root cause. It's just like me when I tell people you don't need to like reduce the size of your pants to feel more confident. We need to get to your brain why it doesn't feel confident. And then the size of your pants will be completely irrelevant afterwards.
Right. Then you're choosing not. This is how I define hustle as well. I define hustle as doing things to try and change a belief. Right. So exactly what you just said. I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to work out, or I'm going to stop eating, or whatever terrible, like whatever thing, so that I can like myself. And exactly like hustling is like doing all the things, changing all the things, exhausting, not actually moving you forward in any way. And we see that in the diet industry and we see it in the time industry.
So how can people work in your magic world of time hacking?
So I have a podcast called Hack Your Time, which would be a great place to start.
Yep.
And we also have a program called Time Hackers, which is like a lifetime access training, modules, videos. You get some one-on-one coaching sessions, community, group coaching. And we also have developed a one-on-one coaching program because I certify coaches in my methodology. And we have coaches all over the world. We offer 20-minute sessions with busy people in mind. And yeah, it's part of our mission to help 10,000 people get 10,000 hours back each.
I love this. Okay. All the links and the free guide will be in the show notes. It was a pleasure meeting you digitally, and you guys got to get over there. Same philosophy, just in the different circumstance of time instead of the size of your pants and your wellness. Thank you, Vikki.
For having me.
Hey, my sisters, if you are loving what you are learning on the podcast, you have to come and check out our feminist mentorship masterclasses and our internationally recognized non-diet coaching certification on our website at www.stephaniedodier.com/shop. This is where you can get the individual coaching and the support to take the concept taught on the podcast to the next level, embrace our well-being in a way that will expand our collective freedom and power. Come and join myself and other women to learn how to reshape your mind, not your body. I'll see you there.